Last month, I returned to my childhood home. It was an old Victorian house where my father had lived before he vanished almost a year ago. I thought being there would feel comforting, but nothing felt right. The house was full of memories, yet everything felt heavy and strange. Even now, I wondered why my father left. Maybe that's why I found myself drawn to the attic one rainy evening. I pushed aside a dusty box and felt something hard beneath it. I pulled it aside and found a hidden compartment. Inside were my father's drawings, sketches that made my stomach drop. The images were unsettling. Odd places and shadows that looked alive. I wasn't sure if they were real or just signs of my father's mind unraveling. My heart raced. The air felt cold, heavy as I stared at those sketches. A part of me wanted to run, but another part felt stuck, like I had to stay. I studied the drawings closely. Strange things began to happen soon after. I heard rustling noises at night, sounds that shouldn't have been there. My heart pounded in my chest at every little sound. At first, I thought it was just the wind. Then, one night, I saw a silhouette pass my bedroom window. I pulled back the curtain. My hands shook, but nothing was there. I couldn't sleep after that. I felt like someone or something was watching me. I'd wake up, sweaty and anxious, dreaming of those drawings. I walked through those weird worlds in my sleep. It felt urgent, like I needed to understand what my father had done. Digging around in the attic some more, I found his old journals. They were filled with strange ramblings and notes about protection and a pact he made for our family. It wasn't clear if it was to keep us safe or to trap us. I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. I wanted to know more, but wasn't sure I should. One night, I sat in the dim light of the living room, flipping through those pages. My stomach felt sick, like I had swallowed rocks. I thought I heard whispers but couldn't tell where they came from. My mother was fast asleep. I glanced at the drawing spread on the table under the flickering lamp when I saw a figure emerge from the shadows. I froze. I couldn't breathe. It seemed like the ink from the pages had come alive. I thought it was just my imagination, a trick of the light. But then I heard the whispers again, calling me closer. I just wanted to understand what my father had done. I thought I could handle it, but maybe I was wrong. Then I realized I wasn't alone. Something wasn't right with those drawings. I took a step back and watched as they twisted and moved. I felt something cold right behind me. "What have you done?" I whispered, scared. And then everything changed. The world blinked in and out. I felt a presence pressing down on me, something unyielding. I thought about running, but it was too late. I should have left the mystery buried. I wasn't meant to uncover the truth. I stumbled backward, my heart racing as the coldness enveloped me. I blinked rapidly, trying to clear my vision, but the room was spinning. It felt like I was struggling against an invisible force. The drawings on the table flickered from shadowy figures to mere lines, each blink revealing something different. Then, just like that, the whispers ceased. I stared at the space where I felt the weight of the presence, but it was gone. The air felt thin, and I struggled to breathe. What had I awoken? What was in that attic with me? I glanced at my mother, still snoring softly on the couch, blissfully unaware of the chaos swirling around us. I wanted to shake her awake and scream for help, but the fear kept me rooted in place. That's when something else caught my eye, the attic door. It creaked slightly, as if inviting me back into the darkness. I thought about the sketches, the stories they held. Maybe there was an answer there. Perhaps understanding it all would bring clarity or even safety. With trembling legs, I approached the door. My hand hovered over the knob. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, to run away, but I couldn't. I quietly turned the handle, fighting against the urge to look back at my mother, and stepped into the stairwell leading up to the attic. Dust motes floated lazily in the flickering light as I climbed the stairs. The boards creaked under my weight. The sound echoing in the heavy silence felt deafening. Once I reached the landing, I hesitated before pushing the door open. The attic was just as I left it, but the air felt charged, vibrant with a tightness that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I stepped inside, the door creaking shut behind me. I turned to the drawings on the table, my heart still racing. I needed to understand. There had to be something, some thread to pull that would unravel my father's secrets. As I sifted through the sketches, one in particular caught my attention. A large, swirling portal with dark tendrils extending outwards, anchoring it to odd shapes and forms. My gut sank when I saw a faint inscription at the bottom. It felt like a warning, but I couldn't make out the words. Suddenly, a chill swept through the attic, and I heard the whispers again, but this time they were louder, sharper. "Find me." The voice felt familiar, like a distant echo of my father's. My blood boiled with urgency. I needed to know what was happening, what he had done. Then, without warning, the drawings began to ripple as if they were alive. I felt that cold presence return, a writhing figure rising ominously from the shadows behind me. Someone, or something, was in the room with me. My breath caught in my throat. I turned slowly, and my pulse quickened. The figure loomed large, obscured by shifting shadows. I wanted to run, but fear pinned me in place. There it was, in stark relief against the darkness, a face that seemed all too familiar. And then it spoke. "You must complete the pact." "What pact?" I gasped, desperate for answers. I was about to uncover the truth, but I had no idea how dangerous it was. The air thickened as the figure stood before me, its features becoming clearer. It had my father's eyes, the same deep-set gaze that had always captivated me. But now, those eyes felt hollow, like they held dark secrets that twisted my stomach into knots. "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, my voice barely breaking through the tension. "I am him, and yet I am not." The voice was low and smooth, vibrating through the room. It echoed in my mind, almost as if it were layered with 100 whispers. "You must understand, our family is tied to something beyond this world." I shook my head in denial. "No, my father wouldn't." "Wouldn't what?" It interrupted, a hint of frustration creeping into its tone. "Wouldn't make a choice to save his family? You have felt it. The weight of our history pressing down on you. You have seen the drawings, felt the darkness creeping into your life. It's all connected." My mind raced as all the pieces began to converge. The drawings weren't merely art, they were warnings, instructions, a red thread connecting our lineage to whatever haunted this space. I took a step back, my heart hammering. But what kind of pact? As if sensing my fears, the figure shifted, coiling into a more menacing shape. "A pact to gain strength and power, but it requires a sacrifice. It's time for you to choose." My skin prickled, and a sense of dread washed over me. I'd come seeking answers, but now I felt trapped in a trap of my own making. What would I have to do? Complete the ritual. The figure raised its hand, and the shadows around it twisted violently, forming a circular void in the air that glowed with an ethereal light. "You hold the key. The drawings will guide you." I glanced at the sketches strewn across the table, the portal etched in frantic lines. A realization struck me. I can't. I won't hurt anyone, not even for power. The figure let out a low, rumbling laugh that echoed off the attic walls. "Power comes at a cost, my child. It isn't just about you anymore. It's about protecting those you love. You want to save your family, don't you?" "Stop! You're not my father," I yelled, the words pouring out of me like magma. "I am part of him, and through this pact I can help you. But you must act. The darkness is knocking at your door." Suddenly the room plunged into darkness, the only light emanating from the swirling portal. I was enveloped in a rush of cold air, and the whispers intensified. Complete the pact, or lose everything. Just as the darkness threatened to swallow me whole, I reached out toward the sketches. One caught my eye, a feeble figure standing at the edge of a precipice, the ink bleeding like blood. Before I could think, something uncoiled deep inside me, and I began to step forward, inching toward the light. That's when I heard a loud crash below, the sound echoing through the house like a warning bell. My heart dropped. What had happened? I had to choose quickly. Would I finish this pact, or would I face whatever was coming the wrong way? The crash jolted me back to reality. My heart raced as the echoes bounced off the attic walls. I turned abruptly toward the staircase, my breath quickening. Whoever or whatever was down there, it was demanding attention. The swirling portal still throbbed in the corner of my vision, beckoning me with its eerie glow. But that sound, loud, jarring. I couldn't ignore it. I needed to know if my family was safe. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to step away from the figure that still loomed, lingering on the edge of the shadows. "Stay back!" I shouted, my voice trembling but firm. What was that? Its hollow eyes seemed to regard me with a mix of annoyance and amusement. "The time for questions is over, child. You will soon learn the consequences of inaction." Ignoring the figure, I bolted for the attic stairs, each step feeling like a gamble. The old wood creaked beneath my weight, a reminder that this house harbored secrets. I paused at the threshold of the attic door, gripping the frame tightly. Whatever was going on below, I had to face it. I cautiously descended, straining to catch any sounds. The silence was deafening. I made it to the second floor, and my heart sank. The living room was strewn with broken furniture and shattered glass. What in the world had happened? Then I saw it. In the dim light, I caught a glimpse of a shadow moving through the shattered remnants of a family picture frame. Panic surged through me. "Mom! Ethan!" I called out, but only silence met my call. As I walked further into the chaos, I spotted the front door. It stood slightly ajar, swaying gently in the breeze. The storm outside must have blown it open. My stomach twisted. Had someone, or something, come in? Then a shuddering noise came from the kitchen. I froze, gears turning in my brain. The figure in the attic had warned me. The darkness was knocking, but what if it was already inside? I glanced back toward the attic, torn between the past my father had lured me into and the present danger at hand. The decision weighed heavily on me. I could run upstairs and attempt to tap into whatever power remained in that portal, or I could face this immediate threat. Before I could choose, the kitchen door burst open with a force, slamming against the wall. My breath caught as a shadowy form stumbled into view. It was a figure, not entirely solid, more like an echo of something lost to time. "Help!" it cried out, its voice distorted. "They're coming!" I gasped, rooted to the floor. This was beyond anything I could have imagined. In that moment between the ghostly plea and the dark presence looming in my memories, I had to decide. Stay and fight, or flee into the unknown and hope for the best. I barely had time to process the shadow's plea before the air in the room felt charged with a frigid energy. The echo of its voice faded into a haunting wail that tinged the air with desperation. My instincts screamed at me to run, but something about the figure's distress pulled me in. I took a hesitant step toward it. "Who's coming?" I demanded, trying to sound braver than I felt. "The lost ones," it replied, its voice cracking. "They come to reclaim what is theirs." A chill shot through me at the name. I sensed something familiar in its words, something my father often hinted at in his ramblings about fate and choices. But what did it mean for us? Before I could think further, the shadows around the kitchen thickened. They curled like smoke, creeping along the floor toward me. My heart hammered against my chest. "Stay back," I shouted, trying to sound confident. The figure swayed in the growing darkness, its form flickering like a candle. "You must leave now. They will find you," it urged, before it began to dissolve into the ether, as if the shadows were consuming it. Then I heard them, the faint whispers, a cacophony that seemed to seep through the walls. My grip on sanity tightened as the shadows began to spill from the corners of the room, coalescing into darker shapes. Panic rose. I had to make a choice, and fast. I darted to the front door, already half open. My mind raced. Should I go outside? But what lay beyond was just as uncertain. I could hear the voices becoming louder, clearer, echoes of things lost, lingering just out of sight. "Mom! Ethan!" I shouted again, hoping against hope that they would answer, that they were somewhere in this mess. No answer, just that suffocating silence. Turning back to the kitchen, I peered into the chaos. That figure hadn't vanished entirely. I felt its presence, hovering like a spectre waiting for me to act. It had given me a clue, a warning. I needed to find a way to fight back, or to understand what was happening. Then I recalled the attic, the rumors, the tales my father had spun about the drawings hidden away. I needed to reach them. Those sketches might hold the key to whatever darkness was swirling around us. With a final glance at the front door, I dashed back toward the staircase. I didn't know what awaited me in the attic, but I felt the urgency. I had to confront the truth. The whispers grew louder, and suddenly a shadow lunged towards me, a dark figure that emerged from the wall. I stumbled back, my breath hitching. I couldn't let it take me. I couldn't let it take my family. I needed answers, and I hoped the attic would provide them. As I bolted upstairs, the dark form followed, hastening my footsteps. This chaotic dance had only just begun, and there was no turning back now. The attic door creaked as I flung it open, sending a gust of stale air swirling around me. Dust motes danced in the dim light, and for a moment I almost felt a sense of calm. But that fleeting tranquility shattered when I heard the whispers again, clearer now and echoing off the wood beams above me. I couldn't tell if they were coming from the shadows or from within my own mind. I stepped into the cramped space, feeling the tension clawing at my skin. The walls were lined with boxes and old furniture draped in ghostly white sheets, as if they were waiting for something, or someone to return. I pushed through the clutter, my heart racing with each step, trying to remember where my father kept his sketches. Then I spotted a low trunk tucked against the far wall, half hidden beneath a pile of forgotten children's toys. Desperation seized me. I rushed toward it, praying it held what I needed. My fingers fumbled at the latch, and with a sharp click, the trunk popped open. Inside were stacks of faded papers, each one filled with my father's meticulous drawings. My breath caught as I pulled them out one by one. They depicted creatures and people I didn't recognize, each one more unsettling than the last. But there was one drawing that sent chills down my spine. A dark figure, eerily similar to the shadow I encountered downstairs, stood over a family huddled together, their faces twisted in despair. Suddenly the shadows in the attic thickened, swirling as if they had a life of their own. I glanced up in panic. They were closing in around me, shifting into the distorted forms of those sketches. "No!" I shouted, backing against the trunk. I had to stay grounded, to focus on the task at hand. The shadow from the kitchen snapped back into my mind. The lost ones. I pressed my palms against the sketches, hoping for guidance. I needed to make sense of their warning. What was my father's connection to all of this? What had he done? Just then, a cold breeze swept through the attic, extinguishing the dim light from a window. The room descended into darkness. Heart pounding, I fumbled for my phone, praying the screen would provide a flicker of hope. I turned it on, illuminating the surrounding chaos. That's when I saw it, the figure from the drawing standing right in front of me, eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. "Your time is up," it hissed, its voice like ice. I stumbled back, pulse racing, realizing with horror that the faint whispers in the air were no longer echoes, they were a summoning. This was not just a warning anymore. The shadows had come to reclaim their lost ones. They were looking for me. I grasped the sketches tightly, recalling the figure's warning from before. I had to fight back. But how? Just then the floor creaked behind me. Another presence, another shadow. I couldn't afford to be caught. I dashed toward the attic door, determination replacing fear. I would uncover the truth about my father and stop whatever madness had begun. But as I reached for the doorknob, a hand, cold and ghostly, wrapped around my wrist. I froze, heart pounding and dread washing over me. I turned to face the new threat. And in that moment, I realized there was so much more at stake than I ever imagined. The icy grip on my wrist tightened. I turned slowly to confront the figure. It loomed just beyond the reach of my phone's light. I could make out ragged clothes, darkened and tattered, but its face was obscured by shadows. The whispers crescendoed, echoing my racing thoughts. "Let go," I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible over the chaos around us. I tugged at my arm, panic coursing through me. The entity did not relent. Instead, it leaned closer, revealing a glimpse of hollow eyes that sucked in the light. I felt lightheaded. Was this what my father had drawn? A battle between the lost ones and their prey? I focused on the sketches, feeling their urgency, their warnings. My father must have known something about this presence. "Please let me go," I cried, desperation coating my voice. The hand did release its grip, but only to push me back against the trunk. I stumbled, struggling to keep my balance, but as I looked up, I found myself staring into the depths of its eyes. "You must finish his work," it rasped, its voice like a whisper rustling dead leaves. "Your father made a choice. You carry his burden now." I recoiled at the words. "What do you mean? The shadows do not forgive." The figure pointed a bony finger toward the trunk. "You hold the key. Will you unlock the truth, or will you become one of us?" The air grew thick with dread as the wisps of darkness swirled closer. I knew I had to act. I looked back at the trunk, remembering the sketches. There had to be something I could use. With trembling hands, I rummaged through the old papers, desperately searching for answers, while the shadows closed in on me. As I flipped a page, I saw it again. The dark figure, standing over the family. But this time I noticed something new. In the corner there were small, intricate symbols surrounding it. They looked almost like a language. "What is this?" I muttered, studying the patterns. The figure seemed to vanish for a moment, as if the drawing held some power. "Find the symbols," it commanded, urgency echoing in its voice. "Break the pact." I felt time slipping away. I began to copy the symbols onto my phone, determined to discover their meaning. Each stroke felt electric, as if conjuring ancient words from the shadows. The whispers transformed. Some were now sharp, and others filled with a haunting melody. They tugged at my consciousness, pulling me deeper into their web. Then a loud crash made me jump. I spun around. Something had fallen from the storage shelves. My heart raced as I prepared myself for whatever new threat awaited. Before I could react, the shadows flared, revealing several figures in the darkness. Each one wore the same sorrowful expression, the energy thick with despair. "You've awakened us," one whispered, stepping closer. "Now the choice is yours." I froze again, realizing I stood at the precipice of a family curse. "What do I have to do?" I pressed, meeting their gazes. As they encircled me, a cold breeze swept through the attic, flickering my phone's light. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my father's legacy settle on my shoulders. I was about to find out what price he had paid, but the urge to flee was consuming. In that moment of hesitation, I knew I had made my choice. The shadows were not going to let me go without a fight. "What comes next?" I whispered, fear mingling with determination. But before I received an answer, everything went dark once more, plunging me into a deeper unknown. I awoke to an eerie silence, my skin prickling as I blinked into the dim light. The figures had vanished. Only the oppressive shadows remained, swirling and whispering as if mocking my fear. My phone lay on the floor, its screen cracked but flickering faintly. I picked it up, hoping to find some sanctuary in the familiar glow, but confusion replaced my brief sense of safety. The attic seemed larger now, more menacing. My breath quickened as I took a cautious step forward. The deeper I moved into the shadows, the more I felt the weight of unseen eyes upon me. I desperately wanted to find a way out, but dread rooted me in place. That's when I noticed it, a faint glow coming from the corner of the attic. Hesitating, I slowly made my way toward it, straining to pierce the darkness. As I approached, the symbols I had traced earlier flickered into view. They were etched into an old wooden chest, the same one I had seen in my father's drawings. My heart raced. This was significant. But what was inside? I reached out, brushing my fingers over the grooves of the symbols. They felt alive, thrumming against my touch. I took a deep breath and knelt beside the chest, my fingers trembling as I unlatched it. The lid creaked open, revealing layers of dusty papers and a silver locket. A chill shot through me. I recognized the locket. It belonged to my mother. I had seen her wear it in photographs from my childhood. But why was it here? As I lifted it from the chest, the shadows around me began to swirl violently. A deafening whisper filled the room, overlapping with the others. She cannot know. She must not find out. They seemed to plead with a new urgency. I opened the locket, my heart in my throat. Inside was a small picture of my parents, smiling on their wedding day. I felt a pang of longing, but when I looked closer, I noticed something strange. The image was marred, black tendrils creeping in from the edges, as if something dark were trying to consume it. "What does this mean?" I whispered, my voice trembling. The air grew heavier, and the shadows pressed in closer. "You're unraveling the truth," the raspy voice returned, echoing from the darkness. "But the truth comes at a cost. Are you willing to pay?" I stood frozen. I had no idea what the cost would be, but I felt compelled to keep digging. I took a step back, trying to breathe through the sudden panic. What happened to my mother? What did my father do? A chilling laugh filled the space, weaving through the darkness. "Explore further, but beware. Not all wishes are granted without sacrifice." Just then, the glow from the chest flickered, drawing my attention back. A new piece of paper lay half buried beneath the others. I reached down and grabbed it, unfolding it carefully. My heart raced as I read the words. In order to save the family, a deal was struck. One must take their place. I felt a jolt of terror. What did that mean? But before I could process the implications, the attic plunged into darkness again, and an icy wind swept through, knocking me off my feet. "I'm not done," I shouted, scrambling back up, desperate to reclaim the light and figure out the next step in this horrifying puzzle. A figure appeared once more, blocking the entrance. The shadows stirred, swirling like a tempest, blocking my escape. I realized in that instant that the fight was just beginning. I stumbled back, my pulse racing as the figure loomed before me. The shadows coiled around it like serpents, and I could barely make out features, a gaunt face and hollow eyes that seemed to glow. "You shouldn't have come here," it rasped, the words vibrating through the air. Panic surged within me. "Get back!" I yelled, raising the locket as if it was a shield. "What do you want?" It only laughed, a sound that chilled my bones. "You seek the truth, but truths are often buried in darkness. Are you ready to confront what lies ahead?" I shook my head, backing away, but the shadows pressed in tighter. I didn't answer. I had to think. Maybe I could buy time. Why did my father make a deal? The figure tilted its head, intrigued. He sought to protect the family, but it came with a price. You will learn what that price is, whether you like it or not. Suddenly the attic lit up again, casting the figure into stark relief. I could see it clearer now, a grotesque version of someone I almost recognized. My breath caught in my throat. What are you? Your greatest fear manifested, it hissed, twisting its mouth into a cruel smile. Now will you run, or do you have enough courage to face the truth? In that moment, I felt a surge of something, anger perhaps. I had spent too long running from my family's past. I wouldn't back down now. Show me, I demanded, voice stronger than I felt. Show me what happened. The figure's eyes widened and the laughter died away, replaced by an unsettling silence that filled the space like a heavy fog. Very well, it whispered, the shadows swirling violently around it, forming images in the air. I stepped closer, drawn in despite my instincts. Scenes played out before me. My father, a younger version, shaking hands with a cloaked figure at the edge of a dark forest. A pact forming. My mother's face twisted in worry as she traced the symbols in a journal. The chest, identical to the one before me, then vanishing into the shadows. What is this? I breathed, horrified. What did he promise? The figure shifted, its form flickering with each new vision. Everything has a cost, little one. Then the images began to blur, replaced by something darker, a swirling void that beckoned me closer. No, I shouted, realizing it was pulling me into its depths. But before I could escape, I heard it again, the raspy voice, louder this time. To uncover the truth, you must relinquish something of your own. My heart raced. What did that mean? What would I have to give up? Before I could react, the figure lunged, a shadowy arm reaching for me. I dodged, but the shadows wrapped around my ankles, pulling me toward the void. I gritted my teeth and fought against it, searching for something, anything to hold on to. And then I saw it. The silver locket, glowing fiercely in my grasp. This belongs to me, I cried, clutching it fiercely. A blistering light erupted, battling the shadows, momentarily halting their grasp. But the figure only laughed, teeth glinting in the ethereal glow. You think that locket holds the key? You've only just begun to understand. With renewed determination, I braced myself. I needed to understand, not just what my father had done, but what I was willing to give to save my family. Let's finish this, I shouted defiantly, ready to confront whatever lay ahead in this nightmare. The shadows recoiled as I thrust the locket forward, feeling its warmth pulse against the cold tendrils of darkness. The air crackled with energy, and the figure faltered, surprised. You believe you carry the strength to change this? It questioned, voice echoing with scorn. I don't just believe it. I will fight for my family, I shouted, clutching the locket tightly. The warmth radiated from it against the paralyzing cold of the shadows, igniting in me a flicker of hope and defiance. Suddenly, the attic filled with a blinding light, pushing back the darkness momentarily. I felt the shadows shift and twist, their howling voices blending into a cacophony of confusion. I seized the moment. Show me the truth, I demanded, steeling myself against the impending dread. The figure hesitated, the swirling shadows wavering like an uncertain breeze. And then, against the backdrop of flickering lights, new images began to form. Somewhere between the layers of darkness and light, scenes unfolded. My father crouched over ancient texts, mumbling incantations, his face etched with worry. My mother, waiting in the corner of the room, her eyes filled with dread as she felt the rift opening around our family. This is it, I whispered, heart racing. My father had indeed made a deal, one that sought power to protect, but it came with strings attached, threads that bound us to this darkness, these lost ones. But before I could fully grasp the implications, the figure surged forward once more, the shadows pooling and thrumming with desperate energy. You think you can defy the Pact? This is your heritage, a burden you must bear. No, I cried, feeling the air thicken with despair. Before I could rethink my approach, I hurled the locket toward the swirling void, recognizing that it wasn't just an artifact. It was a connection to my lineage. I am not afraid of the truth. The moment the locket plunged into the dark whirlpool, there was a deafening blast. The shadows shrieked, bending and twisting, and the light consumed them, retracting and sparking my father's memories back to the surface. I could hear his voice now, rising above the chaos, urgently calling for me. Break the ties, child. Set us free. In the tidal wave of memories, images shifted rapidly. Of me as a child, playing in this very attic, discovering my father's sketches, the feeling of safety dissipating, replaced by an ominous weight that now felt familiar. I welcomed it, leaning into the force of memories. The figure writhed in agony. You cannot erase the past. I can change it, I shouted, my heart pounding with newfound strength. I concentrated on the symbols from my father's sketches, envisioning them coiling together in elaborate designs, weaving a protective barrier. I refuse to let this darkness define us. As I envisioned the symbols manifesting, the shadows began to fight back, but I thrust my arms forward, channeling my deepest fear into determination. Bright tendrils of light erupted from the trunk, wrapping around me like armor. I stood my ground against the oppressive force, knowing I wouldn't let it take me without a fight. I could see the image of my father, his face stricken with guilt, softening as hope began to glimmer in his eyes. You have the power, my child, he cried out, breaking through the shroud of confusion. The choice is mine, I yelled back, pulling on the latent power of intention that connected us to the past. Light streamed from my fingertips, illuminating the attic and pushing against the shadows that thrashed violently before me. And then, everything went white. In an instant I was thrown backward, the rush of energy swirling around me, pulling me in various directions. I felt weightless, untethered from the chains that had bound my family for years. I gasped, breathless, as the luminous aura enveloped me. As the light began to fade, I stumbled, my feet finally grounding me back in the attic, the shadows seemingly retreating into the corners. I blinked rapidly, catching my breath. The air felt different, lighter, freer, yet a residual chill still whispered along my spine. What just happened? I murmured, surveying the dim space, still reeling from the confrontation. Had I truly freed my family from that burden, or merely postponed the inevitable? Just then, a photograph fluttered to the floor amidst the scattered sketches and belongings, a fading image of my family together from years ago, completely unscathed. It felt like a reminder that darkness could seep into even the most joyous memories. But it didn't have to be that way. I looked around, heart pounding, not fully convinced I was alone. Dad, I whispered. Silence hung heavily in the attic. But somewhere deep inside I felt that he was still with me in spirit, guiding me to make better choices. I felt a flicker of warmth. Maybe we were free, or maybe I was only beginning to understand the real price of freedom. I moved toward the attic door, checking to see if the shadows still lingered. Calmness washed over me, but I also felt a new weight, a responsibility to carry forth the knowledge I had gained. I wasn't just my father's child. I was now the keeper of a legacy filled with ambiguity and unanswered questions. As I descended the staircase, I noticed that the front door remained ajar, wind rustling through like a gentle whisper. I stepped outside, feeling the cool breeze against my face and gazing into the world beyond, uncertain yet hopeful. I knew I would never forget what had transpired in that attic, nor would I erase it from memory. I would search for truth, but most importantly, I would nurture the love my family shared. What would come next felt unpredictable, but succeeding against the darkness had changed each of us. I glanced back one last time at my childhood home, unsure if the shadows would return, but resolute in my commitment to be vigilant. There were still pieces to uncover and stories to tell. Whatever awaited this time, I would face it with my eyes wide open.